So let me ask you a question. Who here loves change? All right, there's a couple of you, that's true. Who here does not like change? You know, change is something that it happens, right? It's all the time around us. And when Sandy asked me and said, well, I want you to come and talk to us about change, I started to think on what I wanted to talk to you about. But you know, we all have or know about ex-husbands, right? Or ex-girlfriends, or ex-bosses. So when he told me I had to talk to you about change and you're part of an exchange, I really struggled with it, you know, and saying, okay, so what is an exchange? I had to read up a lot about it. But you know, change is something that we look at as something that comes at us, all right? And it's Colorado. I come from Denver, Colorado. And you probably have heard in the news, you know, the devastating floods that we have had in Colorado. And I mean, yesterday when I left, it was still raining in Colorado. And rain is nothing more than drops of water. And when we take a drop of water from rain that comes down, and we take it one at a time, it's easy to take. But when it comes to us as a torrent, like it did in Colorado, we cannot manage it. So the idea with change is, how do we take it one drop at a time and assimilate it? So I hope is that in the next half hour, I can talk to you a little bit about why change should be fun and why we should joyfully embrace change. And I say it tongue-in-cheek, you know, I mean, I had an employee once that came to me and said, Andre, you know, you are the kind of person that if we come running to you and we tell you the sewer pipe broke and in the basement we are up to our necks in doo-doo, you will say, oh, great, what a fabulous opportunity to meet the plumber, okay? And so, no, I don't want to be that much of an optimist and to say that change truly is fun, but it's attitude. You know, how we accept change is truly up to us. So sit back, relax. Hopefully we'll have a little bit of fun. And I hope that you are partaking of those great cookies that we have today, because at least then I will have the satisfaction of knowing that I have an audience that has filled every seat to capacity today, okay? Now, let me tell you a little bit about the hospitality industry, you know, and Sandy talked to you a little bit about my past. In 1980, I graduated from university, and I went to New York City, and I worked at the New York Sheraton Hotel and Towers. At that time, it was called the Sheraton Center. It's an 1,800-room monstrosity, okay? So that hotel alone has more rooms than Burlington has as a conglomerate, okay? And I was the director of quality there, and the hotel was manual, all right? So that means that when you registered in the hotel, you filled out a piece of paper, and then we would disperse that piece of paper that had several copies. We'd put them in pneumatic tubes and send them to the telephone department and send them to the part of the front desk where we had the rack. And when you talk about rack rate, that was because we truly had a rack that was with 1,800 rooms on it. And we had 2 clerks that worked on ladders, up and down or whatever, changing the status of rooms. And it's a manual system. You know that hotel industry is the second oldest profession because it serviced the oldest profession, right? So we've had a lot of time to perfect the manual system of running a hotel. And now we come with computers. And when we computerize a big hotel like the Sheraton Center, you can imagine the promises that we were getting of enormous efficiency gains, right? And how things were going to go smoother. Well, guess what? Nothing went smooth. Computer was down. And then you had a computer that ran only a tiny part of it, because we still have a telephone department, and the telephone department still had the old-fashioned plug and cable system, and they did not communicate with the computer. And we had a movie system that needed to charge you with the movies, and that's produced pieces of paper that we then had to input into computers. And then we had to have the restaurants' charges also put into computers. And that had to be done manually. And it was chaos because the computer would work and then it would not work anymore. And all of these promises of efficiencies were completely false, okay? Because we could not get the system to stay up and running. So what did we do? We ran parallel systems. We had the computer on one side and the manual on the other side, just to be sure. And at one point in time, we had to have our vice president tell us, tell you what, we cannot be a little bit pregnant, okay? We have committed to the system, and we are going to make it work. I want you to take that rack out, throw it away, and we're going to go fully computerized. We were terrified. We were afraid, you know, can you imagine the chaos in an 1,800-room hotel when you might have as many as 4,000 people checking in, like we had with some of the conventions where you have kids, 4 to a room. Have you ever had to chaperone some of those? What a nightmare. And so we had to be prepared to completely stop relying on the computer. But here is a conversation that would happen at the front desk, because you have to code stuff, right? And now your codes, thanks to the Affordable Care Act. And, you know, and it's interesting because the only thing that they think that probably is affordable about it is the pain of transition to it, because it's costing a lot of money in this transition to the Affordable Care Act. You know it. You clearly understand, and you in Vermont are so far ahead of the curve nationally. You have so much to be proud of. And I'm going to tell you a personal story in a moment on how I think that direction that we're going, that you are going in Vermont, is going to significantly improve, of course, the patient care. I have been a patient, and I will tell you that story in a moment. But as we talk about coding, you know, a conversation that you might hear at the front desk is, oh yes, I got Mr. Smith here, and I want to put him in room 401, but the room is VD. And VD, well, vacant dirty. But, you know, the customer is there standing, you're going to put in a VD room, right? Is that, but no, don't worry, because I'm going to put you in an STD room. And that was the standard room. But the clerks were not aware of how they were using the new lingo, and it was truly affecting the experience of the guest in the hotel. Well, but let me then tell you, I went then to the St. Regis in New York City. So it was just 4 blocks down the street, also a Sheraton property. And we had Mary. Mary had been working in PBX, which is, you know, Public Broadcast Exchange, which is the switchboard department and the telephone department, for 50 years. We had just celebrated her 50th year at the St. Regis, and she moonlighted at the Plaza Hotel too. Mary was industrious, hardworking, and unbelievable. She could keep those calls and the wake-up calls, and we had a spindle, and the spindle had all of the names alphabetized in the little pieces of paper that the front desk would send to PBX, okay, to tell you, oh, Smith is in room 1401, okay? Or you had another rack that said room 1401, oh, that is Smith. And she had those perfectly in sync. And she could handle more calls than anybody. But finally, we start to computerize the telephone department. Mary could not adapt. Okay, we tried everything. And we brought in special trainers. The union brought a trainer. And the family came and wanted to pick at the hotel and say how cruel we were being to poor Mary. And we loved Mary, okay? But Mary had a hard time transitioning to the new system. And the new system was, you know, where wake-up calls are in it, and messages are left electronically and no longer put on paper. And all of that just was too much for her. So change is hard, okay, and it is difficult. This does not end up with a happy story with Mary, because Mary was just unable to adapt, and she resigned from the St. Regis and just stayed working at the Plaza Hotel. But she was 75 years old, and she was still working. So when change comes at us, what I want to talk about is it's our attitude that makes the difference about it. We can fight it. You know, and an exercise that I like to do is to say, okay, let's take this half of the ballroom, okay, from the center of the ballroom up to this side, and this side of the ballroom to the other side. And I want you to divide into two groups. And I'm going to give you 5 minutes. And in those 5 minutes, I want you to tell me how we're going to stop the Affordable Care Act from being enacted. And no, don't worry, you can still eat your cookies. And I'm not doing the exercise, but it's an exercise of futility, right? But so much of our energy and so much of our time is spent in fruitless and senseless fight of change that is coming at us. How many of you, make some noise because I can't see if you raised your hand, but how many of you are iPhone users? Whoa, yes. So, how many of you changed now to the iOS 7 that just came out? Okay, so it's only a few of you, okay? It's a lot less, okay? The others are saying, I'm going to let those suckers try it out, right? And I'm going to wait and see how they bleed in adopting the new technology before I dive in. So there's not a lot of people that are standing there, oh man, I can't wait for iOS 7 to come out so I can learn a new system. Tell you what, I'm one of those. I love technology, and I love the changes that technology can bring to us. And for me, I lost my eyesight 2 years ago, very suddenly. And you can't believe what a difference my iPhone makes for me, and my iPad. They read everything to me. But when they change the system, and it comes up with iOS 7, okay, I have to relearn a whole new system. The gestures that I use are different from the ones that you use, and I have to completely relearn it. So it is harder for me to absorb a whole new operating system. But I just can't wait to get my hands on it and see what are the improvements. What is the next significant thing? Because I want to grab that drop of rain that came down as iOS 7 and take it as a drop. I don't want to take it as an avalanche or a flood coming at me when I said I'm going to bypass iOS 7 because it's just too difficult to take. I don't want to do it right now. And I'm not ready for the change, okay? I'm going to wait it out. And what happens is when we do that, okay, we just keep reinforcing our fear of change. And then we don't change, and then the time leaves us behind. And we can't keep up with what is going on. And that's why it's so exciting to see what you are doing in Vermont, because you are truly at the forefront of change in what is happening in healthcare. And to have an exchange of the size and the complexity and the reach that Vermont has, you know, and we heard from Paul this morning, and wasn't that a great presentation from Paul this morning? And he did a great job. And it is so insightful when you see how the rest of the world is starting to adapt to these systems. And when Paul had the slide up, and he showed, you know, how in every country in the world, when you increase the expenditure, the life expectancy goes up, except in the United States. And I was saying, well, get rid of the lawyers, and then we'll beat everybody, right? And so, but you are so far ahead, so you adapt to change. So then I started to think, well, I'm going to be talking to a group of doctors and people in the health field, so you're used to change. And then I had to have my physical. I went to my doctor, and he walks in, and his modern equipment is a stethoscope around his neck. There's probably 200-year-old technology. And then he uses that little hammer on me, and I'm going like, oh my God. And the eye chart is from like 200 years ago. So I'm going to say, maybe you guys are not so innovative, okay? And, but you are making the changes. You are forging ahead. Yes, it is difficult, okay? And in the hotel industry, we thought that the promise of efficiency would never come back and pay for itself, okay? We had companies that started up with computers, and they sold us a software package and computers, and 2 years later, they were out of business. No more support, and now we are committed to it. We have it. It's installed. It's in place. And we have to continue to patch it up. And then we needed interfaces, right? We have to interface with the parking system. We have to interface with the movie system, with the restaurants, with the telephone. And each one of those interfaces had to be developed specifically for our operating system. And that was costing thousands of dollars. And then the interface would break down, and the guests would leave, and all the minibar charges would disappear. And so it was hard. But guess what? How do hotels function today? You can now completely bypass the front desk. Do you know that I was the other day at the Marriott in Philadelphia, and they got RFID cards now. Those are the ones with the proximity sensor. You don't even have to put the key in a slot. So for me, finding the slot there, it's hard, right? Now I just take the key and wave it in front of the door, click, it opens, okay? And that key is connected to the front desk. And so it's pre-programmed. And they're saying that very, very soon, now you have cards, your credit cards have RFID on them. And there's a negotiation between the hotel company and the credit card company so that they can use your RFID from your card to open your guest room door without you taking it out of your wallet. So you can check in from the airplane, from the airport, bypass the front desk completely, walk up to the door and click, you hear the lock opening up because your credit card is in your pocket, and you go into the room. And everything is happening transparently now. Your charges are going on there, and you don't have to worry about it. Okay? So that is the future of what has happened, from those difficult startup days 30 years ago to what is current today, where you make your reservation from your handheld device while you are in the subway in New York City, instead of having to talk to a person. So guess what happened with the telephone department where Mary was struggling? It has vanished, right? Because the technology has now completely outpaced what we used to do. We used to have, in a place like this, like the Sheraton Center, with 1,800 rooms, it was a battery of operators. And these operators were taking messages, all right? So somebody would call for Mr. Smith, and we would have to ring the room, then the call would come back. We'd have to write the message and handwrite the message. Then we'd have to put it in a box, and the bellman would come and run it upstairs. And then when technology allowed us to do that, we would turn on a little light, blinky light in your room that, hey, you've got a message. You would call downstairs, can I have my message? We would read you the message. Now you called and you said, I want a rollaway or a crib in my room, okay? So you called the front desk. The front desk called housekeeping. Housekeeping called the dispatcher in the telephone department. The dispatcher used a radio system to call the houseman. The houseman would go and get the crib, deliver it, then call the dispatcher to tell them that it had been delivered so it could be crossed off the list. All of that is now done with a phone call from the front desk directly to the person who runs it, to the room. So the efficiencies are there. I promise you they're coming, okay? But right now it's painful, right? It's difficult. I went to my doctor, as I said, to my annual physical, and I'm sitting there and sitting there and sitting there, and I finally go to the receptionist. I said, what's going on, okay? My appointment was an hour and 20 minutes ago. And she says, oh, you know what? We're getting rid of the paper files, and everything is backed up, okay? And it's true. He walked in with an iPad, and he had sort of like a little music stand, and he put the iPad onto this thing, okay? And it was Bluetooth connected to a keyboard that was on this little stand, and he was typing stuff up, and he was finding stuff in my file, but it was taking him a lot longer. And he told me, he says, I'm just getting used to it. And he says, it's so difficult, But that's what I think is so exciting, okay? Because it is the opportunity to make some change. So I'll tell you the story. About 4 years ago, I woke up one morning, and something looks fun. Something's funny with my eye, okay, whatever. So I went to see my optometrist, and she said, I don't like what I'm seeing. So she sent me to a retina doctor. And he said, yeah, you had a TIA, which is a transient ischemic attack, and your left eye has lost circulation, the optic nerve, and so it's gone. Okay, so great. Next day I was leaving on vacation for Argentina, and we went to Argentina, okay, on vacation. And I didn't realize that my vision continued to deteriorate while I was gone. And I was misdiagnosed, but I didn't know it, and they didn't know it. And then I ended up losing my eyesight in my left eye. And, but they said, they did all the MRIs and CAT scans, and nothing was found. So they said, just go on with your life. Okay, so I went on with my life. And 2 years ago, I woke up one morning, and I look in the mirror, and I look again. And I couldn't see my tummy. No, it's not that all of a sudden my pot belly had turned into a six-pack, okay? And I just couldn't see it. I couldn't see below my chest. And so I was really worried, so I drove as fast as I could. and then faster. And got to my optometrist, and I told her what's going on. And she says, oh, here, I want you to take this test. And she dilates me, okay, whatever. And she says, I want you to go to an ophthalmologist. So I go to an ophthalmologist, and he says, well, first I sit there, and I'm filling out all the forms all over again, every form, okay, whatever. And I said, well, I need to run some tests, okay? And he says, I need you to dilate you. I said, I'm already dilated. I said, no, I need you to dilate you. I said, okay, fine, dilate me. So he runs a whole new battery of tests. He said, He says, you know what? I need you to go to retina doctor. Okay, so drive as fast as I can to the retina doctor. And I get there, fill out 1 million forms all over again. And the retina doctor starts to do the test and says, oh, I need to dilate you. I said, I am dilated. At this point in time, I'm wondering, am I in the optic doctor or am I in the delivery room, And so they proceed to dilate me, and I go through the whole new battery of tests and pictures. Okay, what he says, I don't like what I'm seeing. He says, I need you to go see an optic nerve doctor. Drive again to the optic nerve doctor, okay. And I get there, and he says, you know what, I need you in the emergency room, okay. And we're going to fill you up with steroids, okay. So I have pictures of Schwarzenegger, and, but it didn't quite work out that way, and eventually, they diagnosed me with something as called a non-arteritic anterior ischemic optic neuropathy. Now, you know how it is that they say the higher you are in a position, the shorter your title, right? So if you are owner, you can't be more than an owner, or doctor, right? Or CEO. But when you are assistant adjutant to the general of the Middle East, okay, whatever, you know that you're nobody, right? So when they tell me that I have a anterior ischemic optic, non-arteritic anterior ischemic optic neuropathy, I'm going like, they don't have a clue. They're just making up the name to confuse me. But the bottom line is that within 2 weeks, my eyesight was gone. So I can see, I see the shape of the ballroom, I see that there are lights over there, okay, whatever. But, my vision is worse than 2800, okay? And so I just, what that means is that I see at 20 feet what you see at 800 feet, right? And it's incurable. It's my optic nerve has not received blood. Essentially, there is an optic disc, and the optic disc is the one that admits the optic nerve into your eye. And your optic nerve is 3 millimeters thick, and the opening is 1.5 millimeters. And so mine is smaller than that, so it constricts the optic nerve. Now, I have low blood pressure, and I went on a long bike ride, and I didn't hydrate properly, and my blood pressure dropped even more. So I ended up with a swelling inside of my eye that made it even worse. And they were trying to combat that, okay? And so I went to one doctor, and they said, you know what? We want to inject Avastin into your eye, and Avastin is a drug that is given for cancer patients, and it dries up capillaries. And to try and see if we can get some more blood to your optic nerve. But then I go to my optic nerve doctor, and he says, they are quacks. They don't know what they're doing, okay? We want to inject you with steroids in your eye. And if we put steroid directly into your eye, he said, we're going to create a cloud of whitish fluid, so you're going to lose your remaining vision while we're trying to save your vision. But the idea is that to see, can we bring that swelling down inside of your eye, to see, can we still get some blood to your optic nerve? And the world was dark for me then, okay, and scary. And I was so tired of going to all of these doctors, you know, dozens of doctors that I went to, and being dilated so many times. It reminded me of the story, you know, that the teacher is in front of the class and says, okay, children, he says, what body part grows 5 times when it's excited? And Susie stands up and says, Mrs. Smith, this is a 5th grade class. I can't believe you're asking us that. She says, Susie, sit down. I said, I asked the question. I said, what body part grows 5 times when it's excited? So she says, Tommy, I see you got your hand up. And Susie says, no, I'm going to go and see the principal. Says, Susie, I tell you to sit down. Tommy, what's the answer? Well, it's the pupil. Says, very good, sit down. Susie, stand up. I'm going to tell you 3 things. 1, you didn't do your homework. Number 2, you've got a very dirty little mind. And number 3, honey, when you grow up, you're going to be very disappointed. So, but it is, you know, it is thoughts like that can keep you positive, you know. And I was in a meeting with one of my board members, and my vision was deteriorating on a daily basis, okay? And every day I would see less. And I'm sitting in front of this man, and he is ugly, all right? Now this man is truly ugly, okay? And I'm looking at him, and all of a sudden, boom, it's like went down a diopter, okay? My vision went down a little bit more. And I'm going, God forbid that this is the last thing that I see. So moments like that did scare me, okay? But then one day, I got home, and I wasn't driving fast anymore. And I told my wife, I said, this was about, 10 days after the first incident, and I gave my wife the keys to the car, and I said, don't let me drive anymore. I just shouldn't be driving. You know how scary that is? You know how hard it was sometime when you had to go to your mom or your grandma and say, you know, give up the keys to the car? And in the United States, okay, our mobility is based on our car. And we lived 11 miles from my job. So having to give up the car was a difficult moment of saying, all right, I'm blind. I shouldn't be driving anymore, and it went down from there. But it gave me so many opportunities. You remember the plumber and the opportunity to meet the plumber? And so a coworker of mine lived down the street, and we did an arrangement where I would pay for his gas, and he would come by and pick me up. And it gave me the opportunity to learn a whole new operating system. I, thank goodness, already had converted to Apple, and Apple has something that's called VoiceOver that is incorporated into the computer. You don't have to get additional software, and the computer talks to me and tells me so much, okay, and has helped me. So it gave me the opportunity to learn a whole new way of addressing stuff. But then there were also some scary moments, you know, when one of my board members said, you know, can a blind guy be our CEO? And I had to question that. Can a blind guy be the CEO? There's a gentleman by the name of Eric Weinmayer. Anybody hear of Eric Weinmayer? Eric Weinmayer, maybe when I tell you the story, you will know. He is a blind guy that has climbed all the tallest peaks in every continent, all right? And right now, this summer, he kayaked the entire Grand Canyon on a solo kayak, all right? See, he had guides and people talking to him, okay, so forth, and telling him which way to go. But he is an unbelievable man. And he calls me up, he says, Andre, let's go bike riding. Yeah, he's blind, he's totally blind. And I'm partially blind. And so he said, all right, we're going to go bike riding. And he has 2 tandems. And we went out riding. And on the ride, he told me, he says, Andre, I need you to remember one thing. You are who you are still. Your brain is your brain. Nobody took your brain away. You lost one of your senses. What's the big deal? Okay? There's so much more that you can do in this life than being miserable. And the problem is that I was ready to go and lock myself up in the basement and say, you know what am I going to do? I lost my eyesight. And that is part of change. That is part of things that just happen. You remember that cute, cuddly little baby you had that turned into this gawky, pimple-faced, foul-mouthed teenager? It is change, right? What about us, right? We went from gorgeous to becoming our parents, right? And it's change. So why do we fight it? Why are we so upset with it? Okay, it's so much easier to just say, okay, I cannot control my eyesight, but I can control my attitude. Okay? My attitude is something that I am in charge of. The change that comes at us. Okay, so if the federal government says in their greater wisdom, right, we are going to create an Affordable Health Care Act. And we do everything that we can to mold it and to shape it into the best that we can. And then we roll up our sleeves and we say, let's go and make it happen. And when you got an organization like VITL, okay, that comes in and is in front of the country in adopting the changes. Imagine this world. I go to my optometrist, and she does a test. She doesn't like what she sees. And she says, I want you to go and see this doctor. And I can see that she has an opening in 45 minutes. So go there. Your tests will be there by the time you get there. And your file is there, so I don't have to fill out all of these new forms. And the tests that I was dilated for in my first doctor, okay, are already there. So if they need to do additional tests, fine, but I don't repeating the same tests. And in that one day that started at 9 a.m. at my optometrist, and I was dismissed at 11:30 p.m. from the emergency room at the hospital, I'll never forget the doctor says, you know, she told me, she says, Andre, you've got very low blood pressure, okay? And we need to get your blood to go past that inflammation in your eye. So I'm going to give you a prescription I've never given anybody. But I want you to go to McDonald's, take a lot of salt and put it on the French fries and have some French fries. So that's another advantage. Now I have a prescription to have McDonald's French fries. But can you imagine that world where your file is just simply and smoothly moving with you, okay? And every doctor you go to see in that one day, it's already there, and it is with you. It is helping you get the treatment that you need. And that is what excites me about the possibilities of change. You know, we don't choose how we're going to feel. We decide how we're going to feel. Choice and decision, there's a difference, okay? It's a decision, a positive decision in our heads that we have to make to know where we're going to go. And I don't know, can somebody give me a time check, please? What time is it? It's about time?
Yes.
It's about time. Thank you. So this is what I want to leave you with. Change happens, okay? And people have to adapt to it. And this little story will illustrate it. The plumber is at the house, and it says it's going to be $150. And the customer says, $150? That was just 10 minutes of work. I am a neurosurgeon, and I can't charge that for 10 minutes. And you want it in cash now, I would have to bill for it and wait 8 months to get paid. And he says, I know, says the plumber, I feel your pain. I couldn't do it either when I was a heart surgeon. Thank you.